Hello, everyone, again, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and I am delighted to have you here with me again. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here before, thank you, and hopefully you've subscribed and liked. Because today I have Tony Stoltzfus. And for 25 years, he has been writing and coaching and training about how to get out of your head and actually experience the change you've always longed for. And the latest of his 21 books actually is Heaven Experience the Extraordinary, a journey of imagination into the extra dimensional heaven where you'll meet a God who is far, far better than you ever imagined. And I love the part about getting out of your head because I think that that is one of the things that we tend to do. We talk about, suffering being an optional thing. It's something that we do in our mind. And so I'm excited about talking about how you've overcome some of the biggest challenges in your life. And we touched on a few of those before we started here, but give us some background into how you ended up. I mean, you wrote 21 books, so
Yeah.
yeah, and how did you get to like coaching and training and doing all this work?
Well, the coaching thing is how I got into coaching is interesting. Um, Out of college, I got a job in a company that made custom furniture, and I was there for 15 years, and I was really clear the whole time that this is not what I was born to do. So every year I'd be asking God, like, God, can I stop doing this and do what I was born to do now? And every year he said no. But my job was rich people, rich, headstrong leaders would come in and they'd have a dream, but they didn't know the technical furniture language to be able to really express what they wanted. So my job was to ask them questions and draw their dream out of them and put it on paper. And during those years, coaching didn't exist as a profession. And so it was a perfect training for coaching because it taught me that exploratory dialogue, question asking thing and pulling stuff out of people. So it wasn't until I was a number of years into coaching that I realized I was in the right place for my destiny and I never knew it. And I was
Wow.
kicking and screaming half of the time about being in the wrong place.
Isn't that interesting how we find out down the road that we were exactly where we were supposed to be? It's
Mhm.
mind-boggling, really, how we're placed in these situations where we think we'll never use this information again,
Right.
and then suddenly it becomes really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the, like, as I've trained coaches over the years, one of the questions I often ask groups is, what are two things that transformed you that afterward you were never the same? And people almost never cite speeches or books or classes or any of the traditional learning methods. The two things that they point to are experiences and relationships.
Mm.
So as a trainer, that influenced the way I train. If you want people to be transformed, you have to create an experiential relational environment for that to happen. So, for instance, one of my big changes had to do with believing in myself. I left an organization that I started and I left with nothing. And I'm thinking about, and I'm starting over. I've got two young kids. I've got a mortgage and whatever, and I have a bachelor's degree in math, so I'm not really qualified to do anything. There's no furniture design jobs around. And I'd been coaching for a while, and there weren't any coach trainer jobs around either. So I'm thinking, do I borrow money to start this? Do I, get investors? Do I set up a nonprofit? What's the way to do this? And I was I'm driving in Virginia Beach, Virginia, down Princess Anne Boulevard, which is this 6-lane highway in the middle of town. And I'm stopped in front of Walmart at a stop sign. And God spoke to me and said, if you don't believe in yourself enough to invest in yourself, you'll never do what you're capable of doing. And that experience changed the way that I saw myself and the way that I engaged life. So my wife and I went out and we borrowed our life savings out of our house and started a business, and we had 2 years to make a go of it, or else I would have to go get a factory job or something. And we get down to the end of the 2 years and we've got the thing up and running, but we're not making a full income yet. And I had my second book ready to go to print. And so there's this minor crisis. We paid our taxes and we had enough, we had enough money left to buy the first 500 books. That was all we had.
Mm, wow.
And so me and my wife were like, what are we going to do? And I was like, this is what God told us to do. We've put 2 years into this. Let's not fail at the last moment. And that book paid for its first printing in 6 weeks and
Wow.
has sold over 200,000 copies around the world. And
Mm,
that's funded a lot of our ventures since then. Um,
wow.
but I
And what was the
had
book,
to,
might I ask?
coaching questions.
Okay.
So it's been translated into a bunch of languages, and I've been ripped off in China. And as an author, people are always stealing your stuff. I've
Yeah.
had enough free copies of my books illegally downloaded to put both of my kids through college. So
Ah,
that's the scale of the problem.
yeah, and I hear this so much. It hasn't happened to me that I know of, but I mean, there's a lot of people who have experienced that, people taking their work and
Right.
putting it up and profiting from it. And it's like, wow, how in this day and age does that happen? But I guess it
It's very
does.
easy in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy. So, you've gone through some pretty big challenges. I mean, obviously that was one. Um, Tell me about the fire.
Okay. So it happened in a really difficult period of, okay, so like the fire was the fourth most stressful thing in my life that year. It was
Hmm.
fourth. Um, so it happened in this really difficult period, and we're in Redding, California. There's, fires in California all the time. And we were out in another state, and the day before we flew home, I got the talk from one of my kids where they tell you everything that you did wrong as a father and how you hurt them and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So I'm, you know, kind of heartbroken and go home, and there's a fire like 12 miles from us on the other side of a lake. So I go to bed, and the next morning I get up and I'm still laying in bed, and I pulled up my iPad and we've got a mandatory evacuation notice.
Mm,
And the fire has gone all the way around the lake and, 10 miles overnight. And you don't know, there's a ridge behind our house, so we don't know if the fire is 5 miles away or 500 yards away or what, but it's moving fast. Um, so we still hadn't unpacked our suitcases from our trip. So we escaped with our computers and our dirty laundry. We each had a suitcase and the dog. And I was Mr. Practical because in those moments, your world is so real and tangible that you don't think it could just disappear in a day. So I
mhm,
took the practical things we needed to keep our business going while we were evacuated, but I didn't take a single memento. I didn't take our calligraphy wedding vows off the wall. I didn't take the videos of the kids. I didn't take our scrapbook of love letters that my wife and I wrote to each other when we were dating.
mm,
Um, and it was, I think, 6 days until we knew what had happened. And it was traumatic for our town. Half of the town evacuated in the middle of the night, and there was a huge 3-hour traffic jam, and several people died, and 1,000 homes burned, and our community is
wow.
like 90,000. So the
Mm.
police were working 20 or 22-hour days. Um, in the middle of this, I told one of my kids that I thought the house was gone. And I was just watching the coverage and looking on the internet and all this stuff. And a few hours later, I realized that my child had disappeared. And, 8 hours later, came home and had tried to walk through the fire to our house, which was out in the country, and finally got picked up by the police because the fire was burning in both of the ditches beside the road. So in the middle of this fire, when half the town is evacuated, you can't call anyone, the police are not available, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my child, did they go out and kill
Mm.
themselves? Did they? So the I remember one point where I went to fill out this form with one of the relief agencies, and I was a math major in college, and I couldn't do division. And I was like, okay, I'm traumatized. My brain is not working.
Yeah.
Um, so we lived in other people's houses for 3, 4 weeks, just friends from church, and were gracious to us. And we finally got a home, but we didn't have anything. I mean, we didn't have, I, I had a project where I had to cut the legs of this desk down so that we could use it properly. And I had ended up making 3 trips to the hardware store to cut because of things. I didn't have masking tape.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't have any, I didn't have a square. Um,
Mm.
and it's the one of the big effects of a fire like that is it's so inconvenient to have nothing, and you don't realize how much your stuff lubricates life
Yeah.
until you don't have it.
Mm.
But in the middle of all this, there were we had challenges in our marriage, with some mental health issues going on, and I have really good coping skills because, like, I've been coaching people in this for a decade and a half by then. But I took a stress inventory and I was off the scale, and they had no entry for a natural disaster in the stress inventory.
Oh,
So just
wow.
all the other things that were going on in life put me off the scale. And I reached a point where, I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for a long time, but I was working about a day a week because that's all I could do. Um, and yeah, there are things that can push you beyond whatever your resilience is or whatever your ability to cope is. There are things that can push you beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hearing more and more stories about, just those really devastating things, and lots of times multiple challenges going on at one time. Like you say, there was some other things going on in your life at the same time. And so, how did you come through that? What advice can you give to people who are in that space right now?
Well, I had 3 different counselors. I had over 100 counseling appointments. One
Wow.
meeting with me and my child, one meeting with me and my wife, one meeting with just me.
Mm.
Um, I think so. Some things that helped me. One immediate grief was I'm a creative person. So, like, I had made my wife a solid cherry dining table at the shop for an engagement present. I had built a poster bed with hand carved wood posts because I had a carving business too. And, that bed today would be worth like $11,000 or something like that. And it was gone. I mean, there
Wow.
wasn't a speck left that you could identify.
Gee.
I was a stained glass artist, so I had this piece around my office doors. It was 1,500 individual pieces of glass,
Mm.
with the lead frame and stuff, and it melted. I mean, it was, I do have one thing I did recently is I started building furniture again, and I embedded a little piece of that glass that I salvaged into the dining table just as a reminder.
Uh,
But with the things that I had made, I realized pretty quickly the thing that was important to me was not having them, but creating them, that I had made them. And the loss of those things couldn't take that away from me.
Mm,
Um, so that was a comfort to me. I have another thing that really helped me deal with it is I have a really vivid picture of heaven and where I'm going to end up. So, like my wife and we're watching these British crime shows right now, and these people are all just devastated when somebody dies and their whole world falls apart. And I'm like, I will not react that way when the people around me die because I know that I'll see them again, and I know there's a beautiful place to go. And my dad died 30 years ago on Christmas Day.
mm.
My mom had to pull the plug,
Wow.
and that's painful, but I don't, I haven't lost him forever.
Mhm.
Um, and I find myself these days, people want to climb the highest mountain in every state in the union and do this goal. And as I get older, at 64, I find myself more often thinking, I'll do that in heaven. I don't need to take a balloon ride. I don't need to build a house. I don't, you know,
Mm,
there's my life is not careening toward its end. It's moving toward something better.
yeah. Well, and you said something pretty profound there, the realization that it was about the creation of those things, not necessarily that they existed. And
Right.
I think we can run a parallel to life. It's about living life, not, the destination that we get to through that. It's the actual living it. And, I think that's huge. We can't lose that. We can't lose that
Right.
experience. Yeah, it's very
Here's
profound.
another fun thing about the fire. I can laugh about it now. It's been 5 years. Um, but 3 weeks before the fire, I was sitting out in our yard and we had a beautiful view of the mountains and stuff. And I was there with my Bible. I said, Jesus, could I really live without all this stuff? And I don't for a minute believe that God burned my house down.
No.
Um, God does not send evil, but he's so good at redeeming it that at the end it looks like a plan.
Yeah.
It looks like he caused it. Um, but that was kind of a comfort to me because it wasn't but a few weeks into it where I was like, yeah, I can live with all this stuff. It's inconvenient, but it's just stuff. Um,
Mm.
and there are people who've never gone back to their houses because they can't bear it. I've been back there multiple times. It's kind of fun to see what the new guy's building. Um, when you have a fire, they come and they take everything you own and an excavator puts it in a dump truck with plastic in the bottom because it's a toxic waste site. So everything you own is now toxic waste. And they dig all the ashes up, they dig the foundation up, they dig the driveway up and the sidewalk up and the first 6 inches of soil, and they carry all of it to a landfill. And there's not a stitch left.
Yeah.
So I do have this is one of the only things that survived. I made this awful thing in first grade. And because it was ceramic, if I drop it, it'll just shatter. But because it was
Wow.
ceramic, it survived. And it's some kind of weird little monster I made.
It's not something.
But that's basically it.
Wow. Yeah, and when you're talking about that, like I can kind of relate because when my husband and I moved out of our home and into um, my father-in-law's homestead, we sold the land to Hutterite colony, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
what they did. They just plowed up the house, the everything, and they just pushed it into, the ground or whatever.
Mhm.
And that was a little tough to take You think about how many years we lived there and we raised our children there and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it took a while for me to kind of be able to be okay with that. It
Yeah.
was an interesting thing, but that's it's how life goes on, and as sad as it was, we had to continue on. We had to continue making memories. We had to continue living our lives. So it's it's not easy, but definitely as you've illustrated so well, it's so doable
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And faith in God was a big part of coping.
Hmm.
Friends and people around you, it's hard to cope without. Um, but I think, my relationship with God, there were times where I was just like, God, I know I can talk to you whenever I want, and I can ask you a question and you'll give me an answer. Because one of the things I've taught for years is this simple method of asking Jesus questions and getting immediate answers. And like, I know we could do that, but I just don't feel like talking to you right now. I don't feel like talking to anybody right now.
Hmm.
I just wanna lick my wounds, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not like I
Mhm.
couldn't talk to people because I did, and I could laugh and joke around, but my desire to be with people, because my whole call and destiny and all that stuff involved helping people, I just didn't have it for several years.
Yeah.
And I'd get worried about it and say, so Jesus, I'm not so sure I'm doing okay here. And he'd be like, just trust the process. It'll be okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and it truly is a process, I think. And I truly think that it's something that we have to embrace. It's not something we can push away. Like you say, it's uncomfortable. We start to question whether we're all right going through that. And yet, like you say, your faith and your connection with God, Jesus, helped you keep the faith, that it was a process and that you would get through it. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, we 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 bought a house maybe 6 months after this all happened. We moved into town because we just didn't have the heart. A 20 square mile area was just denuded, and my wife didn't want to live in the middle of that, and we didn't have the
Mm.
energy to do a custom home build. So we bought a house. A couple months after we were in it, a pipe broke in the upstairs in the middle of the night, and the water came down through a light fixture on top of our bookstore inventory. We had like
Ah.
$40,000 worth of books. So at 4 a.m., every horizontal surface in the house is covered with drying books, and we're trying to salvage. And we finally got that fixed. And then we had another flood through the kitchen ceiling. I mean, this is a really nice house we're in, too.
Mm.
On the 1 year anniversary of the fire, my best friend died. He had an
Mm.
unexpected sudden heart attack. And he was the counselor who had helped my son out of his depression. So I flew to Indiana and picked up my son, and we're driving to Maryland for the funeral. And halfway there, got a call that Kathy's mother had died. So we just went from that funeral to the next one.
Mm.
So it was just one thing after another. Um, and when my friend died, first it's just like the next morning I had a voicemail from him on my phone. And you're listening to this person and you're trying to compute
Yeah.
that they're dead and they're talking to you. Um, but I went to his funeral, and he was a counselor who'd had an affair and blew up his life, and an affair with a patient,
Mm.
um, and literally lost everything. And I called him every day for during his healing process, and I helped him get back into people helping because I gave him a role in our organization. And I went to his funeral, and his wife and kids were up there, and they're using the questions for Jesus language that I taught him. Um, and the ministry people from his orbit are all, um, it was such a beautiful picture of how you invest in someone and that investment moves forward through generation to generation. And I think one of the things that the Bible talks about with heaven, the verse is make friends with yourselves with the unrighteous riches, so the people may welcome you to the eternal habitations. And the idea is you help people with your stuff on earth, and they become your welcoming committee to heaven. And that
Mm,
experience was kind of a preview for me of I've lost my friend, but there's something of us that lives on in these people. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to meet all these people that I never knew that are going to come up and say, Tony, you don't know me, but you helped someone who helped someone who helped me. And thank you for your contribution. And I'm going to get to do that for other people too.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's so amazing. And there's something really healing in being able to be of service to others in some way, and especially when we've
Right.
gone through some really big challenges, being able to help others walk through some of their really big challenges. It's not just about helping, it's about healing. And it's not just healing for the other person, it's healing for yourself. And to me, it's everything. It brings that purpose and that fulfillment to life and that joy that you talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's one of the key things I've learned in all these different experiences that might help people. Most most everyone who goes through a difficult experience of suffering asks the question why. And
Mhm.
in my experience and the experience of the people I've worked with, God rarely gives you an answer to that question.
Mhm.
And the reason is when you ask why is about self-protection. If I know why this happened, I can keep it from happening to me again. Or maybe it's about revenge. If I know why this happened, I can get back at the people that did this to me. But why is a cheap substitute for what I really want? What my heart longs for when I'm hurt is to be known, to be valued, um, to be with people, to have people that recognize that my life is something worth investing in. And when you're hurt, you can go to God and say, Jesus, how do you want to comfort me in this circumstance? And you'll get an answer. If you go and say, tell me why this happened and keep it from happening to me again, you probably won't.
Mhm.
Um, God is not. I I spent 4 years full time studying first century cultural practices from Jesus's day and 4 months in Israel, going to research libraries and reading all these obscure books.
Wow.
But a fascinating thing about the New Testament is people in that era had, they called them household gods, little idols that they would pray to for fertility or keep my crops safe or keep my children safe. Or Jesus does not, there's virtually nowhere in the New Testament where Jesus says he's going to protect you from things.
Mhm.
And I know as Christians, we're often praying for God to protect me. But I think Jesus left that to the realm of the household gods and said, my job is not to take you out of this world and give you a place where grief and loss don't exist, but I'm going to meet you in them. Um, so that's what I'd encourage people to look for. Don't look for the answer you can protect yourself with. Don't look for some religious thing that will keep anything bad from happening to you because I don't think it exists. But there's a like, okay, I'll talk about heaven again. Um, People have these weird ideas about God being a judge that I'm gonna go stand before God and he's gonna tell me everything wrong I did and punish me for things. Um, Jesus, when he was on the cross, forgave the guys who, you know, Father, don't count there's the guys who tortured him to death.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that forgiveness sticks in heaven. That if that comes up, Jesus is going to say, "Hey, I forgave that. We're not going there." Um, Justice in heaven is more like forgiveness than it is like retribution. Forgiveness is the best analogy on earth of what heaven's justice looks like because the victim can be fully restored no matter what the offender does.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had to forgive some people in my life that have I felt were big offenders. But do you want to hear a forgiveness story?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's
So
important.
I
Mhm.
we moved across the country to join this ministry, and after we were there for a few months, the head guy came and asked us for a loan. And knowing we'd sold our house to come there, and we loaned him 50 grand. And it took 5 years to get our money back and destroyed our relationship.
Wow.
And because whether people are spiritual or religious or whatever, the character issues only go away through work.
Hmm.
So anyway, we left there with our tails between our legs, and I saw a counselor for a year. And when we finally got down to the bottom of why I had been so complicit and unable to stand up for myself, um, I realized I had this belief, my destiny is dependent on his favor. This guy, my network came from him, my influence came from his influence, and if I didn't have his favor, I would never do what I was capable of doing in life. And I had to come to the point of saying, my destiny depends on me and God and nobody else. Um, but it was a long journey of, the organization that I had started, I started an organization with him and another guy, which I worked in for like 5 more years after this happened, and we're not speaking to each other, and he's on the board.
Ooh.
And, and I was finally like, I can't do this anymore. Um, and so I left, and they brought somebody in to replace me, and he was really threatened by me and started accusing me of stealing from the company, and just because it was mainly because a lot of the staff had left and the institutional memory of what had happened in the organization wasn't there, so they didn't realize they'd come across something that looked a certain way to them, and they didn't know the history behind it. So I lost access to everything I'd written to that point in my life, all the course materials and whatever, and they asked me to sign a career suicide non-compete that I wouldn't compete with them in anything that I did for the rest of my life,
Mm.
um, which I didn't sign. But yeah, I left there with nothing. And, over the years, you say the words, I forgive you, and it's good to say them. But there's part of you that knows you're
Yeah.
not whole yet. And if
Hmm.
you met this person on the street, you'd probably freak out. Um, so it gradually gets better. And a number of years later, I was doing a workshop, and my counselor from this, I got him to come to the workshop. And part of this workshop is there were 30 people coming. I personally interviewed everyone who came about their worst experience in life. That was the mandate. Tell me your worst experience in life for an hour. And then
Mm.
I rewrote their stories from heaven's perspective. And when they came to the workshop, we had this heaven room with actors and staging and lighting and original music, and they got their story from heaven in the middle of
Wow.
this. So my counselor's story was his father had been a pastor and influential in his community and had a moral failure and lost his position and his influence. And he was going through the restoration process and being accountable to people and opening up his life and all this stuff. And then he died suddenly. And so my friend was like, "What happened to my dad's destiny? He was meant to be influential in this community and help a lot of people, and he's gone, and there's no, what happened?" And so the story I wrote him was, you've become a counselor who works with leaders all over the world, and you've helped hundreds of pastors get healed, finish well, do what they were called to. So when you get to heaven, you're going to get to go to your father and say, "Dad, I know you failed and fell, but God gave part of your destiny to me, and I've completed it bigger than you ever imagined. So here, share with me in the reward of our fulfilled destiny." And I thought that was a beautiful story.
Mhm.
A couple weeks later, he calls me up after the workshop, and we're talking about something else, and he says, "Where are you on your healing journey?" And God spoke to me in that moment and said, "That story you wrote for him is your story." And this guy that I worked under, every book that have written, if I had stayed there, would have his name on it too, because we were collaborators and there was stuff we were meant to do together that betrayal destroyed.
Right.
Um, but when we get to heaven, I'm going to be able to go up to him and say, "Our relationship broke down, but God gave these parts of what we were called to do to me, and I finished them bigger than we ever dreamed of. I've sold 80,000 books in China. I've got people in Arab countries who are learning about Jesus through what I wrote. So here, share with me in the fruit of our completed destiny. And in that moment, our relationship will be everything that God ever intended it to be. Uh,
Mm,
so heaven can take the worst that happens on earth and make something beautiful out of it. And that for me was sort of the completion of the forgiveness journey. And occasionally I'll just think to myself when I'm doing something, "Oh, I'm doing this for us." Um, and a lot of my thoughts about him for the last few years have been more down that line, not the line of, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to meet you," or "How did you hurt
right.
me?" or "Oh, saying I forgive you again," but looking forward to meeting him in heaven and seeing the thing that we both wanted happen.
Hmm. That's amazing. What a cool perspective. And everything that you're sharing is so practical to so many people's lives because I think everyone has a story about someone who's betrayed them or done something that has hurt them and needs that kind of direction or leadership. And so I love that you're providing this through your own experiences. How can people find you and all of your work?
Well, here's my heaven book. You can find that if I stick it in front of my face, the camera will
There it
focus.
is.
You can find
Perfect.
that on Amazon, Heaven Experience the Extraordinary. There's a website, heavenexperience.net, and it has videos of explaining the facts behind things in the book and so forth. I have another website for my first century cultural forays. The website is likeahumanbeing.com. But again, a bunch of videos of first century culture and thought. And it's about reading scripture visually instead of with your head. So when I picture it and I get into the thoughts and emotions and desires of the characters, then I start to, then the writings are affecting my emotional brain and not just my rational brain.
Mm.
Um, the coaching company, the latest coaching company that I started is called Leadership Metaformation. I sold it to our trainers who are happily running it and doing a great job, but that's meta-formation.com. So those would be a couple places you can find me. Or you can just search for Tony Stoltzfus and I'm like a rash on the internet.
Well, we'll definitely have those links underneath the video. And I just want to give you one opportunity to give any last minute advice or anything that we haven't maybe touched on. If you wanted to add to that, it would be
Oh,
fantastic.
well, here's other quick things. I do online classes where we're studying heaven and they're free and anyone can join. So if you go to the heavenexperience.net website, you can contact me and if you want to be in a group, you can. I also, with some partners, purchased 2,000 copies of this book. It just came out this fall. But we have 2,000 copies to give away to people who are grieving or have suffered major loss. And the way we're doing it is through people. So if you get the book and read it and love it and think, oh my gosh, there are people in my life that this would really touch, you can fill out a little form online and we will send you free books for free to give to those people. So
Wow.
it's a great to have a picture of heaven if you've lost a loved one is an incredible help. So,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for taking the time to do
yeah,
this.
it was
And
fun.
I'm encouraging people to check everything out. We'll make sure we have the links under the video. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching.
Yeah.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.